Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Paul Graney. President Trump and leaders of the Middle East signing the Gaza peace deal, and the president speaking in the Israeli parliament as Hamas releases all living Israeli hostages. The National Museum services shuttered over the weekend as we enter the third week of a government shutdown. And the president says more Democrat-focused layoffs are coming down the pike. Volodymyr Zelensky will travel to the U.S. this week to meet with President Donald Trump. The Ukrainian president says discussions will focus on air defense and long-range missiles. As trade tensions with China heat up, the Trump administration suggests Xi Jinping may not have approved an order that shook financial markets.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
It's great to have you here this Monday afternoon. President Trump hailing what he calls the historic dawn of a new Middle East as all living hostages are freed and world leaders sign the Gaza peace deal. We now go live to NTD Washington correspondent Mari Otsu at the White House. Good afternoon, Mari. Historic day. What can you tell us about President Trump's remarks?
Paul, good afternoon. Yes, a historic day indeed. And President Trump is saying that phase 2 of that 20-point Gaza peace deal has already started. This is coming on a day of reunion and joy as all 20 of the living Israeli hostages are freed and nearly 2,000 of the Palestinian prisoners are also released, and the ceasefire is still holding. The second phase of the peace deal includes the destruction of all of Hamas's offensive weapons and offering amnesty to the Hamas members who agree to a peaceful coexistence. But President Trump's top diplomats, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, are saying that the president's aspirations go beyond ending this war and extend to bringing peace to the entire Middle East. Here's President Trump earlier today addressing the Israeli parliament on this issue. Watch.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of the age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
And President Trump, in his remarks to the Israeli parliament, also urged the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of his bribery charges, saying that Netanyahu has been one of the, quote, greatest wartime leaders. And Netanyahu was indicted back in 2019 on charges of breach of trust, bribery, and fraud, all of which he has vehemently denied in the years since. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his remarks to the parliament today, calls President Trump Israel's greatest friend and nominates him to be the first non-Israeli recipient of the Israel Prize, which is the country's greatest honor. And on bringing peace to the entire Middle East, President Trump says that the United States is ready for a deal with Iran when Tehran is. Take a look.
Yet even to Iran, whose regime has inflicted so much death on the Middle East, the hand of friendship and cooperation is open. There's nothing that would do more good for this part of the world than for Iran's leaders to renounce terror, stop threatening their neighbors, quit funding their militant proxies, and finally recognize Israel's right to existence. They have to do that. They have to do that.
This is Iran's foreign minister declines an invitation from the president of Egypt to the peace summit today, saying that he cannot engage with leaders who, quote, threaten and sanction Iran. Meanwhile, in other peacemaking efforts, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to meet with President Trump this Friday at the White House. This is coming as President Trump said on Sunday that he and Zelensky have spoken about potentially sending Tomahawks and additional Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. Paul, back to you.
Mari Otsu in the White House. Thank you, Mari. And a monumental Gaza peace deal was signed in Egypt today. President Trump hailed the deal as a victory and thanked his team as well as the leaders present for making it happen. In his speech following the signing ceremony, President Trump announced a new beginning for the entire Middle East. Let's take a listen to his speech.
General, Mr. President. Great General, great President. Thank you very much. This is the day that people across the region and around the world have been working, striving, hoping, and praying for. They have done things over the last month that I think were really unthinkable. Nobody thought this could happen. With the historic agreement we've just signed, those prayers of millions have finally been answered. As you know, the hostages have been returned, and further work goes on having to do with the, sadly to say, bodies. Together we've achieved what everybody said was impossible. At long last, we have peace in the Middle East, and it's a very simple expression, peace in the Middle East, and we've heard it for many years, but nobody thought it could ever get there, and now we're there. And I want to congratulate everybody sitting in these first few rows and standing behind me. I don't know why they chose to stand, but I promise I'll make it short, okay? We are not going to keep you standing for long. These are great leaders. After years of suffering and bloodshed, the war in Gaza is over. Humanitarian aid is now pouring in, including hundreds of truckloads of food, medical equipment, and other supplies, much of it paid for by people in this room. Civilians are returning to their homes. The hostages are reuniting. I mean, it's beautiful. I'm just watching it backstage. The level of love and sorrow, I've never seen anything like it. It's amazing when you see they haven't seen their mother, their father. They haven't seen them in such a long time, and they lived in a tunnel, a very little tunnel, very deep. And the level of love is just incredible. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's, in one sense, it's so horrible that it could have taken place, but in another sense, it's so beautiful to see. A new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part, because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world. I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the Arab and Muslim nations who helped make this incredible breakthrough possible. And you really did. To President El-Sisi of Egypt, who is so generously hosting us today. And I want to thank you for the outstanding job your country is doing in so many different ways, and for helping us so much with this peace agreement. I also want to thank the President for the escort of 6 fighter jets. Oh, we looked out the window, we said, I hope they're friendly, and they turned out to be very friendly. But we had 3 on each side, and they are beauties right out of the great, really American manufacturing hub. We make the greatest military equipment in the world. We have the strongest military in the world by far. And I knew exactly what those planes were, and I knew exactly how much you paid for those planes, too. You paid a lot, but you got a pretty good deal. And they are great planes, and we just appreciate it. That was quite an escort in. That was very impressive. But Air Force One was really, it was covered with Egyptian desert just a few months ago. If you think about it, just a few months ago it was Egyptian desert, and now it was just a few feet off our window. And it was a spectacular sight, and I appreciate it very much. Really, that was pretty good. You got our people by surprise. I don't know if they were thrilled right at the beginning, but they were thrilled as we sailed along very, very calmly and safely. And I'm deeply honored to receive from you, Egypt's highest state honor, the Order of the Nile. The Nile is so beautiful, so magnificent. It's such a beautiful title, the Order of the Nile. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Appreciate it. Great honor. I also want to give a very special thanks to the Emir of Qatar, a man who's outstanding. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, long before politics, and he's a fantastically respected man. His Highness Sheikh Tamim is respected by everybody. He's respected by everybody, and in the most positive way, not only because of power, because of his heart. He's got a tremendous heart, and he's a great leader, and his country loves him. Thank you very much for being here. It's an honor. Let me also express our condolences to the Qataris on the tragic car crash that claimed the lives of your cherished diplomats, some of whom were known by our people, and they were supposed to be incredible people. So please extend our sorrow and best wishes. That was tough. That was really tough. On this extraordinary occasion, I also want to give our sincere thanks to President Erdogan of Turkey. He's always there when I need him. He's such a tough guy. He is tough as you can be, but we love him. And when they have a problem with you, they always call me to handle it. And usually I come through. We just have a good relationship, and we have from the beginning. And so I want to thank you very much and say hello to your wife, your beautiful wife. And it's great to be with you. Always there. When I need him, he's always there. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I also want to thank, I just spoke to him on the phone, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed, Saudi Arabia, a special friend of mine. Boy, he's come so long and so far, and he's doing a fantastic job for his country. And I want to just thank him. And, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed of the United Arab Emirates is here. Where? He's here someplace. Well, oh, he's not here. But he's here in spirit, I can tell you that. And he's been another one. He's been absolutely incredible, and we appreciate it very much. And His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan. And thank you very much, King Abdul of Jordan. He's here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And you really have been a great helper. We appreciate it. Appreciate it. Prime Minister Sharif of Pakistan. And also, I have to say, my favorite field marshal from Pakistan, who's not here, but the Prime Minister is here, and you're going to give his regards. Where are you? There you go. Thank you very much. Do you want to say what you said to me the other day? Come, would you like to say what you said the other day? I think it was so nice. Please.
Thank you very much, my dear President Trump, my dear brother, President Fath el-Sisi of Egypt, Majesties, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. Well, I would say today is one of the greatest days in contemporary history, because peace has been achieved after untiring efforts led by President Trump, who is genuinely a man of peace, who has relentlessly and untiringly worked throughout these months, day in and day out, to make this world a place to live with peace and prosperity. I would say that Pakistan had nominated President Donald Trump for Nobel Peace Prize for his outstanding, extraordinary contributions to first stop war between India and Pakistan, and then achieve ceasefire along with his very wonderful team. And today, again, I would like to nominate this great president for Nobel Peace Prize, because I genuinely feel that he is the most genuine and most wonderful candidate for Peace Prize, because he has brought not only peace in South Asia, saved millions of people, their lives. And today, here in Sharm el-Sheikh, achieving peace in Gaza is saving millions of lives in the Middle East. Mr. President, I would like to salute you for your exemplary leadership, visionary leadership. And I think that you're the man this world needed most at this point in time. World would always remember you as a man who did everything, went out of the way to stop 7 and today 8 wars. I would like to thank my very dear brother, Sheikh Tamim. He's Akh al-Shaqiq, who has really worked very hard along with others to achieve peace in this region. My very dear brother, President Tayyip Erdogan, His Majesty, King Abdullah, and of course, my very dear brother, Mohammed bin Zayed of UAE, and of course, my very dear brother, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And he has also been very, very helpful and contributed very valuably in this wonderful peace process. Ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't want to take more of your time. Suffice it to say, had it not been for this gentleman, not only, who knows, India and Pakistan are both nuclear powers. Had he not intervened along with his wonderful team, during those 4 days, the war could have escalated to a level. Who would have lived to tell what happened? And similarly, here in this part of the world, in the Middle East, Mr. President, your valuable contribution along with President Sisi, I think history will remember in golden words. I wouldn't say more, except God bless you, God give you long life to serve like this for all time to come. Thank you very much. Very kind.
Thank you. Wow, I didn't expect that. Let's go home. There's nothing more.
And that was a replay of President Trump and world leaders signing a Gaza peace deal in Egypt. And now we're bringing in Brian Leib, a foreign policy analyst and CEO of Henry Public Relations. Brian, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here.
Brian, quite the moment for the Middle East. There's a lot of hope for peace there and quite the solidarity being shown among world leaders during Trump's speech.
It is quite the day to wake up to a moment where the Israeli hostages are being reunited with their families, and we're no longer calling them hostages, but we're calling them former hostages, to now what we're seeing on the screen with President Trump, with world leaders from the Arab world and also from major European countries as well. We really are on the cusp of a new day and a new dawn in the Middle East. And I think we should all be very proud of our president and be proud of our administration for the work that they've done so long to bring together this moment. I mean, we are really on the cusp of lasting peace, and it's something that we should all be very proud about.
What has the president done differently in negotiating peace? Why perhaps didn't this war come to an end before?
Didn't come to an end before because he's in office for 10 months now, and it took President Trump coming back into the White House to be able to partner with Prime Minister Netanyahu, partner with the Arab countries as well. I like to say that President Trump, before becoming the president the first time and now the second time, he was a private sector business guy. So he was used to making deals. He was used to sitting across the table with people that maybe he didn't necessarily agree with, but he had to find a way to make a deal, and he had to find a way to compromise. And I think that's exactly what we see here, and that President Trump has been able to bring world leaders together to make tough deals. And there's going to has to be compromise. Some parts are going to be good, some parts are maybe not going to be great, but at the end of the day, everyone has to compromise. But I think it's an amazing moment. It's an amazing feat for President Trump to once again usher in a new era of peace. And I think as we look forward in the weeks and months to come, you're probably going to see an Abraham Accords 2.0 with lots of Arab countries officially recognizing the state of Israel. And that's pretty powerful.
Well, that's interesting. The president has said that it's not just peace for Gaza, but he's also looking for this to be a stepping stone for peace across the wider Middle East. How do you see that perhaps, as you put it, Abraham Accords 2.0 actually playing out now?
I think the groundwork was laid just probably about an hour ago, with a lot of these Arab countries kind of quasi already acknowledging the state of Israel. And I think there's going to be much more of that. Listen, the audience has to know that, countries like Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, while they don't officially recognize the state of Israel, they do quite a bit of cooperation and have for decades now on military, intelligence, commerce, trade. So they've had these friendships and these relationships, as I like to say, in the darkness for a long time. And it was President Trump's Abraham Accords that gave a lot of these countries the runway for their relationships to take off out of the darkness and into the light. And that's when we saw the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan officially recognize Israel. And I think that we're going to continue to see that happen in the weeks and months to come. I think there's going to be a lot more peace happening. And there has to be. Enough is enough. And we're finally at a point now where we have a president that's able to bring these countries together to make peace. So I think it's going to be a really exciting time from a foreign policy perspective over the next couple of weeks.
Now, we see from the images on the screen, both on the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, celebrations, joy, hope. On the other hand, are there perhaps still stumbling blocks to ensuring peace in the medium and longer term?
Well, the biggest stumbling block right now is the fact that Hamas still exists in the Gaza Strip. And as long as Hamas exists and also is armed the way that they are, it's going to be very tough for there to be any kind of a breakthrough with what's happening in the Gaza Strip. So time will tell in terms of how that unfolds and what that looks like. I think the main priority was to get back the living hostages and also the remains of unfortunately the murdered hostages as well. And I think that's the main focus right now. What comes next, it could go in a lot of different ways. But I think both the Israelis and also us, the Americans and our Arab partners, everyone understands there can be no more Hamas in any way, shape, or form. So we'll see how Hamas reacts to that, because again, the Israelis, they did a good job in getting rid of quite a bit of Hamas, but there's still probably anywhere from 15 to 20,000 Hamas troops or Hamas members that are still in the Gaza Strip, and that's a big problem. That's going to be a big impediment to peace actually happening in the Gaza Strip. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Brian, because I know part of Trump's 20-point plan was to ensure a de-radicalized, terror-free zone in Gaza. And as you said, we're not exactly there just yet. Now, the president, throughout the process, has shown concern for both Israelis and Palestinians in the war. How has this display of universal respect for life impacted negotiations?
Well, listen, I think whether it's the president or whether, I think we all, have a deep appreciation for human life. But I think where a lot of us draw the line is with Hamas. And, when Israel, was going after Hamas and Hamas was using their own people as human shields, I mean, that was horrible. I mean, it was really horrible. And this is who Hamas is. This is who they've always been. So I don't know if there's going to be able to be like this de-radicalization of Hamas. If in fact, I don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening. So I'm not sure what the future holds for Hamas, but certainly there are Palestinians. I hope and I pray that want to have peace with the Israelis, and I know the Israelis have wanted to have peace for many years. They routinely have shown up at the negotiating table. Don't forget, the Gaza Strip is a pretty big example of what the Israelis were willing to do to have peace. They uprooted tens of thousands of Israelis from the Gaza Strip and gave the land to the Palestinians as a massive olive branch for peace. And unfortunately, the Gazans elected Hamas a year later, and it's been 15 years of what we've seen. So I think the Israelis want peace. I think the Arab countries want peace. I'm not sure if the Palestinians want peace, if I'm being honest with you. And if they want peace, I think they're going to find their Israeli partners want to have peace as well. but time will tell in terms of how all of this unfolds. But I think the biggest news of the day, and I mentioned this in the beginning of our interview, is the fact that 20 hostages, and you're seeing on the screen right now, they're being reunited with their families after 700 plus days living in the worst type conditions possible. And now they're being reunited with their families. And it is a beautiful moment. I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on, the left, the right, the center. It is truly remarkable to see these families being reunited after 2 long years.
Absolutely. Brian Leib, appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
And world leaders, along with figures across the political spectrum here in the U.S., are praising the historic Middle East peace agreement brokered by President Trump after Hamas releases all living remaining hostages back to Israel. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the details.
Mr. President, you stand before the people of Israel not as another American president, but as a giant of Jewish history. You, President Donald J. Trump, are a colossus who will be enshrined in the pantheon of history.
President Trump received a standing ovation at the Israeli Knesset, where he also opened the door for future peace negotiations with Iran. European leaders also highlighted how the ceasefire in the Middle East was a Trump administration accomplishment.
I think he has a huge importance in, it's his deal. He put all the pressure on it. And of course, other countries helped, particularly Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt. But I think a lot of countries pushed on pressure, also Netanyahu. But I think Trump deserves all the credit.
Let me start by saying this is a truly historic day. And alongside our congratulations to President Trump, to Egypt and Turkey, I want to extend our thanks and congratulations to you.
Leaders in the Middle East also acknowledge how any lasting peace and the successful implementation of the Phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas will depend on the continuous engagement of the Trump administration in the region.
We have to keep President Trump engaging, and that's very, very important because it's all about his engagement, it's all about his vision, and he's the one who's able to deliver and to end this war and to bring an end to the whole conflict of in the Middle East.
And in the U.S., former political rivals of President Trump like Hillary Clinton and sitting U.S. senators like Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona put national politics aside to acknowledge the historic accomplishment of the Trump administration.
I think he should get a lot of credit. I mean, this was his deal. He worked this out. He sent Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, over to negotiate this, and it's so far has gone well.
Really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan.
Democratic Senator John Fetterman posted on social media that peace should be bipartisan, celebrated, and built upon. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Luis, thank you. And joining us now is David Wormser, senior analyst at the Center for Security Policy. He's also a former senior advisor to U.S. Vice President Cheney. David, quite the day. I'm sure you could hear the praise for President Trump coming from people even like Hillary Clinton, and also recognizing the efforts made by world leaders to getting this over the line. What's your takeaway from today?
Well, I mean, President Trump really did achieve something that was unachievable until his efforts in the last few months. People are beginning to realize it is not only a momentary policy achievement, it is a much grander and bigger thing. So, Washington is, they like winners and they like to be the father of things, so they want to heap on the praise and say, yes, well, we're on board and so forth. So President Trump really has transcended some of the partisan nitpicking in Washington through his accomplishment here. And make no mistake, it is his accomplishment.
David, many people wanted this war to come to an end. People who perhaps, were on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side. People wanted it to end. What was it about the Trump administration that allowed them to actually do it? What specifically?
Well, it was a perfect storm. There were three main factors here. One is President Trump was committed to making this happen, and he was committed to siding with the Israelis on the key demands so that the Israelis felt confident in the promises and guarantees from the United States. And those included not only the release of all the hostages, but also the disarming of Hamas and its removal from Gaza. So when the Israelis felt strongly backed up and promised from a president they see as very pro-Israeli, they felt confident enough to act. The second element here was the president himself has tremendous currency. He is feared and respected in many parts of the world. So he could bring around the Qataris, the Turks, who were very afraid of what will happen if Trump goes against them. The third element was the Israeli military. The Israeli military was destroying Hamas and was within weeks of completely taking Gaza. So really Hamas and those who support Hamas, like Turkey and Qatar, were facing utter destruction of their ally and their proxy. And as a result, they wanted to save what they could. And then finally, Prime Minister Netanyahu bucked his own political base on some level to stop the war before there was an absolute victory, hoping that diplomacy can deliver what the military would have been able probably to deliver in a few weeks. So it really took this perfect storm and this partnership between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Trump, none of which was there until now. And that's what led to this moment.
David, you brought up so many things that pertain to how likely this peace deal is to actually stick in the long term. I want to get to all of those points in just a minute, but we saw President Trump had quite the iconic moment in the Israeli parliament today. He then flew across to Egypt. Again, iconic images of in front of world leaders who perhaps you would never see together in that way ever before, in what I can remember. Of all of these images, David, what is the most significant part of what we saw today, both in Israel and in Egypt?
No doubt the release of the hostages in 2 waves. That is one of the main images that will stick today. And the second one is the president being welcomed in the Israeli parliament more warmly than any Israeli leader would ever be welcomed in the Israeli parliament. So really those 2 things really stick out today, and they really are symbolic of what it's about. It's one is what Trump was after, which was the liberation of the hostages, and the other was the man who did it, and sitting next to the other man who helped do it, Prime Minister Netanyahu. So you really have right there visually what defines today.
David, in your previous answer, you talked about how the Israeli military were destroying Hamas and they were within a breath of being completely wiped out. But you said that their funders perhaps were worried about this and wanted to salvage what was left of their ally or their proxy. In those words, what I take from them is perhaps this may not be over just yet.
Well, it really depends on, the President Trump has laid out a very strong plan. It's a very workable plan, a very feasible plan in this 20-point plan. But whether it will be peace or not really depends on its implementation. And President Trump has made it very clear he's very determined to have it implemented in all its parts. And we have seen, we're into phase 2, sort of, but we're already seeing problems with phase 1. The living hostages have been released, but all hostages should have been released. 4 of the dead ones were released today, but only 4 of 28. That's already a material violation of the agreement by Hamas and their sponsors. Now, they come up with excuses, so the Israelis in the United States are indulging them a bit about that and saying, okay, it may take you another 4 days, 5 days to find the bodies or dig them out. That we get that. Okay, you have those 4 or 5 days, but then they really have to all be released. So you already have a violation and a backtracking. The second thing is Hamas already shows it has no intention to give up power and no intention to give up its weapons. So what will really determine whether this is the absolute turn toward a different Gaza, a different situation, which can unlock things on one side, is the determination of Israel and the United States to execute Trump's plan in its fullest and to hold the parties to their commitments, because otherwise it tees it up for another war further on. So it's really the President Trump understands that, and he keeps returning that Hamas must comply or else it's going to be the hard way. Now, that aside, this also
David,
gave the Saudis and the UAE, and only the Saudis and the UAE, who were not major players in this, an opening to say, look, we're dealing with the Palestinian problem. We can now go ahead and make peace with Israel. So I think the real peace to watch is not Qatar, Turkey, Egypt. Egypt's already at peace, sort of. It's Saudi Arabia and the UAE. That this is a bridge that they can use to just run over to reach a different position with Israel.
But David, what makes you say this about Hamas, that they're not willing to give up power, they're not willing to give up their weapons? Is this entire peace deal that we're watching today not based entirely, if not almost entirely, on this prerequisite?
It is based on this prerequisite, and there is this feeling that Hamas was isolated because of Qatar and Turkey were feeling the pressure, partly because they were afraid Hamas would be utterly destroyed, and with it, the politics of Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood politics. But second of all, also, they were afraid on one level because Israel had struck Hamas leadership in Doha only a month ago, and the Qataris were very worried that Israel could do that also in Turkey and so forth. So as much as that was a problematic strike and did cause a lot of problems, it also seems to have motivated the Qataris to pull back and rein in Hamas. But yes, it is the foundation of it. Hamas can't exist as a behind-the-scenes power like Hezbollah continues to do in Lebanon, where they're not technically in power, but they're the real power, if not the face of the situation. So that is a very tricky situation. And what I think Israel and the United States are counting on is, with enough pressure on Qatar and Turkey, they will eventually pressure Hamas to withdraw and maybe exist in exile in hopes one day in the future they can come back, but not being in Gaza now.
David, do you think that the leadership in Israel are thinking this way as well? They feel that this is far from over, or there's a lot to do here?
Well, the leadership in Israel is thinking, first of all, yes, the Turks, Qataris seem to have responded to the threats and seem to have responded to the imminent destruction of a core proxy of the Muslim Brotherhood network that they represent, which is Hamas, and that can reverberate across the entire region in terms of tarnishing and causing sort of a momentum shift against Turkey and Qatar. The second thing the Israelis are looking at is there's a lot of tensions between Qatar, Turkey on one side, Saudi Arabia and the UAE on the other. So the Israelis are trying to modulate this whole thing to bring in the UAE and the Saudis much more and sort of shove Qatar and Turkey out of the situation. So the Israelis think that with enough pressure, Qatar and Turkey to sustain their interests, at least their minimal interests, will eventually cede enough on Gaza so that they can get Hamas out. But the Israelis are not holding their breath. They think also it's very possible, 50-50 chance that they'll have to go back to war very soon against Hamas to finish them off, but this time without the hostages in the way. And of course, the big question then is, will President Trump say, listen, I gave, promises given, promises kept, promises made, promises kept, and I promised the Israelis that if Hamas doesn't disarm, then Israel will disarm them. So it's really, it's still, there's a lot of tense issues still.
David, what you told me is incredible. Just when we thought things in the Middle East were getting a little bit simpler, David, you come on to our show. David, let me ask you, so our previous guest talked about the deal possibly leading to Abraham Accords 2.0. With everything you just laid out for us, how do you see relations in the Middle East developing moving forward?
Well, I alluded to it, and I'll say it more openly now. The Abraham Accords are really anchored to the UAE, to the United Arab Emirates. And it really was emanating from fear that the UAE had that the West was withdrawing from the region, and they needed a strong horse that was sympathetic and aligned in interest with them to challenge common enemies, which for the UAE are obviously Iran, but also Turkey and Qatar. The Saudis have the same panoply of interests and same panoply of enemies. The difference is the Saudis seem, because they're in Mecca and Medina, the custodians of the two mosques, they feel an obligation to further the Islamic interest as a whole religion. And so for them, the Palestine issue wasn't as easy to walk away from as the UAE. So they needed something from the Israelis, some indication that they're willing to go ahead and at least entertain the idea of some negotiations for a Palestinian state, or start a process that would lead to discussions, not to commit to it and not to set up a Palestinian state, but just give them something to work with. And what you see in this 20-point plan, this is one of the brilliant things I think President Trump introduced. There is a formula in there that does not commit Israel to a Palestinian state, doesn't even recognize a Palestinian state, doesn't even set it up as the end goal per se. It discusses how to get to some new future that might include a Palestinian state. And that might be enough for the Saudis. It'll take a little while. They need to let the dust of Gaza settle and so forth. But it's quite possible that the Saudis will say, that's good enough for us. We're now going to cross the threshold and formally make a peace with Israel, which is a major strategic gain for the United States, because this Indian, UAE, Saudi, Israeli, Greek alliance is really a challenge to China's intrusion into the region, which is more anchored on Turkey, Qatar, Iran, Pakistan, and so forth. So you see a major, it's not a universal, it's not a homogenous area. So not everybody's going to be the winner and not everybody's going to be the loser. But I think the Israelis and Trump are ultimately playing for a very interesting strategic game that could fundamentally lead to the Abraham Accords, which is that southern tier, expanding and strengthening to include Saudi Arabia directly and maybe some other actors.
Incredible. The epic of the Middle East continues. David Wormser, thank you so much, sir. Take care.
Thank you.